Hello and welcome to this webinar, which is webinar, I think it's about 14 or 15, something like that, in this series for Cambridge Marketing College. My name is Neil Wilkins, and the topic today is continuous improvement. This is something which is very close to my heart and has been for quite some time, since I was working many years ago in manufacturing marketing, and I kind of learned this whole process and concept of continuous improvement within a manufacturing setting, which for me was one of the most poignant moments of my career, and I think really established quite a discipline, if you like, and really showed me in a practical sense that marketing is so much more than simply making things look and sound good. So this is very much about process and people, and I'll explain that as we go through this particular session. So if you are here for the first time on this particular series, welcome. It's great to see you. And this has been quite a long process, if you like. We are now in, well, this is webinar 12 in this series. And we've covered a whole host of topics, including communication, presentation, persuasion, negotiation, thought leadership. And more recently, we've been focusing a little bit more on things like commercial thinking and emotional intelligence and empathy. So some of the stuff has been very much from a practical professional sense, and some of the stuff has been very much from a personal development and self-awareness sense. And for me, this is the lovely thing about this series, is we are talking about professional and personal things that marketers at all levels, and this really is at all levels, can really benefit from paying attention to and exploring. So I'm not here to say I have all the answers for you. Each and every one of us on this session, and if you're watching this on catch up, this might apply to you too. We're all viewing this and experiencing this from our own unique journey. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is sharing with you some thinking, some ideas for you to go away and explore and maybe elaborate on as you develop your professional career. So the upcoming sessions for the rest of this year include things like resilience in work, and that will be really an extension on today's session, continuous improvement. Then we're going to be looking at the benefits of collaboration. Most of the things that we do in marketing and business development and sales and commercial work more generally have to really be done in collaboration with others. So we're going to look at the benefits and some of the technical skills that you can bring into the mix if you're looking to collaborate more effectively with all of the stakeholders that you engage with. And then as we move into December, and obviously the time of year is quite pertinent here in terms of reflecting and planning what is in the mix for next year. We're going to look at reflection skills. On the 10th of December, we will be looking at how to self-reflect effectively. So how to really look at what it is you do, how you perform, how you behave, your preferences, and really understand what we mean by self-reflection and the value that it can bring to the choices and decisions that we make, both professionally but also personally. Self-reflection is one of those wonderful things on each of our human journeys that we can really enjoy and really benefit from. So I've got a lot of things I want to share with you in that webinar. And then we will conclude this 2021 series with webinar 16. I can't believe it's 16, but we will do this. And that is self-motivation. So as we move into 2022 with all our plans and thoughts and dreams and aspirations, we're going to look at self-motivation, how we can really set up some great personal habits that we can bring into our work, but also enabling us to lead a really conscious, mindful life going forward. So that will be beautifully set up for the start of 2022. So hopefully you'll be joining me on the remaining webinars in this series. But today we're here to talk about continuous improvement. And what I'd like to do, you'll probably have noticed in the chat here on the session today that Lauren's invited you to post any questions at all for anything that I'm covering that you'd like me to explain, maybe slightly differently, or perhaps it will be that you've got some thoughts and you might have tried some of these things and have some feedback to share with the group. So use the chat facility, and I look forward to sort of getting your feedback and ideas as we go through this session. If there are any comments in there, hopefully I'll be able to deal with those at the end of the presentation. So let's get into the detail here, because what we try and do is not have too much blurb at the start of these webinars. We like to get right into the detail because, after all, that's why we're here. So let's define, as we always do in this series, we always begin with a bit of a definition to set the scene. Well, for me, this thing about continuous improvement came out of when I sort of first began in marketing back in the late 1980s. Yes, it is that long ago. It was becoming a little bit of a cliche. And it became a bit of a cliche. People would pay lip service to continuous improvement, and it became a little bit sort of management speak, and was kind of really almost ignored, if you like, over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. But I would say now, because of the times that we're looking to navigate, there's a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty out there as we started to emerge as businesses and organizations and as people from various restrictions, not just in the UK, but around the world. What we found is that we need to really start to embrace the concept of continuous improvement again. So it is something that is much more back in fashion now. And what I'd like to kind of really emphasize here is that when we think about continuous improvement, for most of us, we think process, we think about efficiency, but actually this is about a mindset, because continuous improvement is something we can apply to pretty much everything that we do on a day-to-day basis in our work and in our career and in our sort of commercial mindset, if you like. So let's start by looking at some ways that we can define what we mean by continuous improvement. So here we go. A continuous improvement process is an ongoing effort, that's key, ongoing effort to improve products, services, or processes. These efforts can seek incremental improvement over time or breakthrough improvement all at once. So let's break this down a little bit. So what we've got here are some choices. Okay, so if this is an ongoing effort to see some improvements and to make refinements and to make added value from our products, services, or processes, then we can do it all at once. So we can do a big, groundbreaking continuous improvement change, if we like, and try and do everything at once. Or, and this would be my preference, and I'm going to justify this in a short while, seek incremental improvements over time. In other words, little differences, little improvements, and we are talking very little improvements that maybe collectively can all add up to something greater. Okay, so you've got a choice here. Are you going to devote and invest a lot of attention, resource, time to making a big, big breakthrough? Or are you going to just do little things, maybe each day, just that little bit better, and see what happens, measure what happens, and then maybe add those together to see a difference? Now, I like this particular definition because for me, this is about mindset. Okay, so a continuous improvement thing is not going to happen unless you are in the right mindset. It can't happen without people. It doesn't kind of exist without the human intervention. In other words, it isn't actually a process. It's how people respond to making a conscious, deliberate decision to continually invest and focus on getting better. It's quite simple, really. Conscious, deliberate decision to continually invest and focus on getting better. It is very, very simple. This is not rocket science, but you'll be amazed, actually you might not be amazed, but I'm always amazed by the number of people who really either don't understand it or don't actually believe that this is a good thing to do. What is wrong with focusing on getting better? What is wrong with continually investing on improving everything that you do all the time? So actually creating a mindset that says it's not a one-off project with a start and an end, but actually an ongoing process, and I put in brackets there, and a mindset that aims towards excellence in the chosen area of focus. So if there is a big challenge that you have right here today, professionally or personally, if you were to focus on making little tiny incremental improvements to that situation or scenario every single day, and in fact, actually every single moment of every single day, what could you achieve? What difference could you make? How could you improve stuff for the better, not probably just for yourself, but for those around you and possibly for your organization more generally. We have some really important stuff to talk about here. So let's begin. 3-step continuous improvement focus. If this is about mindset, we need to start focusing our mind on where these opportunities lie. Okay, now I would identify as part of continuous improvement, and this is, not specific to any particular organization or market sector or scenario or level of seniority. This is something you can do personally for the stuff that you've got control of. And also you could introduce this to your organization. You could do this strategically, or you could do it tactically in small bite-sized chunks. But you, I believe, have got 3 areas that you can choose to focus on. So these are ones I just like to delve a little bit more deeply into. So the first one is increased efficiency. Second one is increased quality. And the third one is reduce resources. Increase efficiency, increase quality, and or reduce resources. Now you could do all 3, but by focusing on one to begin with, you start to build a process, a system, interactions that are relevant for you and your organization. Trying to jump in and do everything all at once is probably a big ask for most people in most organizations. So typically what I would recommend is that you pick one. So either you're going to increase some efficiency, so that's getting more value from fewer resources that you use. And by resources, I mean people, budget, and time. Okay, so if you can get more value from reducing the people that are needed to give that value, or reducing the budget that you spend, or reducing the time that it takes to provide that value, then you've increased the efficiency of what you're focusing on. So increasing efficiency means getting more value from fewer resources. You could choose to increase quality. So this might be your customer satisfaction, for example, or it might be the quality of a particular product that you're developing. The value from this, of course, comes from it will give you competitive advantage. So if you can figure out the level of quality that your competitors are offering and providing, then you've got something to compare to. So there's a measurement thing that we're going to cover in a moment in a little bit more detail. So there's a measurement thing going on here. Competitive advantage by increasing quality is an amazing focus for continuous improvement. So just little incremental differences and improvements on the product or the service that you're offering, the customer satisfaction levels versus the competition. Little improvements, 0.5 percentage point, 1 percentage point, can make a huge difference to how you're perceived by your market. And increasing quality also potentially adds to profitability, because with increased quality comes the option to increase your prices because you're adding more value. Therefore, profitability stands a chance of increasing too. So there's kind of a process and a feel-good factor here in continuous improvement, as much as there is the commercial value as well. So there's a kind of a win-win thing going on here. So again, what is not to like? Everybody's going to benefit from a focus on continuous improvement. Third step, reducing resources. Now, it's clear, obviously, that if you invest less in the people and less in the budget and spend less time doing something, you can continuously improve that thing. Now, what I'm not saying is you have to make everybody redundant. What I'm not saying is you have to strip out your budget and not spend anything. And what I'm not saying is you've got to try and get time down to 0. We're talking about small improvements, reducing resources on a particular activity or product or service delivery or time spent, acquiring a customer, for example. If you can reduce the resources to achieve that in little bite-sized chunks, little percentage incremental changes, then you are reducing the resources, which makes you continuously improve what you do. So the choices here: increasing efficiency, increasing quality, or reducing resources. It's a really, really wonderful mix of just making things better, making things more effective, making things more profitable, giving higher value for less investment of your resources. All of these things are why we should be taking this seriously. And so this is where marketing can really score, because you should have your finger on the pulse of all of these things. This isn't stuff that kind of lies way outside of marketing's remit so that you can't influence it, or you can't set up that meeting to talk this thing through with your team, your colleagues, your line manager, whoever. This is something that is within our power of influence. So it's an opportunity here for us to kind of guide and lead the organization, and maybe even just make the organization aware that we can actually achieve these things. And ultimately, this is about creating more value. And you can define what we mean by value. Value comes in all shapes and guises. Yes, there's financial value, obviously, but there's also about value creation in terms of the value that the customer perceives from the relationship it has with you. There's value in your supply chain. So your suppliers and other stakeholders are going to see more value if you can build in this real efficiency mindset within your organization, because this will be a very efficient way of improving your value creation. And of course, all of this, when we talk about value, has return on investment at the center of it. Return on investment is at the core of continuous improvement, because if we can invest fewer things, but actually still increase the value, or if we can improve the quality, we're going to see a better return, then actually everybody wins. Customer wins because we're giving better service and product and value to them, but we win because financially we're just more profitable. So creating value within a continuous improvement framework allows us to tick every single box as a marketer. Yes, there's still the delivery of how we're going to do it. We'll talk about that in a moment, but the mindset here for actually thinking, I can improve what I do. I can send out fewer social media posts that are just higher quality and that get better engagement. I can actually refine the product the product portfolio in such a way that actually we have fewer products, but actually they're providing, a good 80, maybe 90% of the value that we need, but it's so much cheaper to do it this way. So there's so many little ways that we can actually do this and achieve this. It's just about figuring out, am I ready now as an individual and as an organization to take this mindset on? Do I want to create more value? Do I want to be more efficient? Do I want to see a better return on investment? And if the answer is yes to any of those questions, then now is the time to do this, because the likelihood is that your competition possibly isn't. So what are the models? Kind of how do we do this? Well, the very first model is probably the most simple, and this is the PDCA cycle: plan, do, check, act. Okay, so if you decide, I want to be more efficient. I want to do better ROI. Yes, I want to provide more value to my customers and the business. Where do I begin? Well, the PDCA cycle says, okay, let's plan. So let's identify an opportunity, and we're going to probably just pick one for improvement or change. In other words, I'm going to sort of identify somewhere where we know we could do better. Maybe it's the obvious one. Maybe there's just something that we do we know that we're not great at. Right, okay, there's an opportunity here for an improvement or a change. Then the next bit is the do. So then I need to plan and implement a change to this thing, but on a small scale. Okay, so I'm not going to try and jump my customer satisfaction from, 90% to 98% in a day. And I'm not going to maybe introduce a whole range of new services in the next week. We're talking little small scale changes, okay, that I'm going to plan. So I'm going to get a proper plan together. So I'm going to think about the timing, who needs to be involved, any sort of resources like budget and stuff that I need, but on a small scale, because I just need to be thinking about this little incremental difference. The big stuff can come later, or maybe even not. Maybe it is all about just small differences, but this is where we begin. And the third step is check. So I need to do some kind of analysis of the change. So I've put my little plan into process. So I've obviously set up an initial baseline sort of benchmark as to kind of where we are now. So I need some kind of numerical number that I can compare against. And then I check. So I look at the results. I compare the difference of the before and after on this little small scale change and see if my plan made a difference, see if the change actually resulted in something different. And then the fourth point is act. So if it did make a little difference, potentially then I can scale it up. So I can do more of that change. I can ramp it up, maybe do it across the whole business, not just in this one little area. And then I can continuously watch what happens. If the change didn't produce any kind of results that I was hoping, then maybe that wasn't the thing to focus on. Maybe it was never going to be that thing. Maybe I could just tune it again and try again, or I can focus on something different. So this is why doing things at a very simple level, little incremental small changes that you're then very mindfully watching the difference of the before and after allows you to make these conscious decisions as to really where to focus your attention. So continuous improvement doesn't have to be this great big monster of a project that everybody's involved in. It can start very, very small, which again gives you the control, gives you that ability to be able to, control that agenda, control the conversations, the meetings, and the reporting. Then there are obviously models that you can use which are a lot more complex. Now, if you search out continuous improvement techniques or continuous improvement models, you'll see things like Six Sigma, Lean Management, TQM, which is Total Quality Management. All of these things are great, okay? But what I want you to do is just begin to start creating this as a habit. This is a mindset. Okay, so I'm not going to get into some of these much more detailed project management techniques and tools, because what I want to do is foster in your minds the kind of the desire, if you like, for continuous improvement as a mindset. But just know that if you want to go into this big time, and if you start seeing some good improvements, that this is a place you can actually go and do some really, really fundamental changes to your organization if you choose to in the future. But for now, let's just remember this is about mindset. This is about a simple process. PDCA, it's great. That'll get you started in terms of a process. But knowing all the time, particularly in the early days, that continuous improvement is about you and those around you. And I would say that if you focus as much on the teamwork as you do the actual change in the systems and the processes, then you stand much more of a chance of creating a process and a mindset across the organization that could actually then start to identify other opportunities that maybe you personally can't come up with because you don't really have access to them, or it's kind of not really what you do. So what we're doing here is starting to collaborate this mindset with others, communicating the value of continuous improvement and saying, look, guys, if we could all of us just make a little improvement here in maybe just our day-to-day activity, maybe the amount of time we spend talking on the phone, or maybe the amount of time we spend in meetings, there's a really good one. If you could reduce every single meeting by 10%, how much resource and time would that save for your organization? It's these kinds of conversations which can be hugely powerful, not just for you personally, but right across your organization. So it's about free thinking. It's about collaborating. It's about communicating the concept and the mindset of continuous improvement, and kind of opening up the almost the permission for everybody to make suggestions of these little improvements. Now, I keep saying this, don't I? I keep saying about little marginal gains, little sort of incremental differences. And there is a whole philosophy around marginal gains, and it was kind of developed by and certainly evangelized by Sir Dave Brailsford, who at the time, some years ago, was the one of the directors at British Cycling. And this was in the days before British Cycling was the world leader that it's become at a sort of an international and Olympic level. Dave Brailsford was also sort of the instigator of all the massive improvements in Team Sky. And the successes that Team Sky had on the Tour de France literally came from this marginal gains philosophy. And what Sir Dave Brailsford would say would be that if you focus on the 1% improvement of many things, anything is possible. multi Olympic champions have come out of this philosophy. Multi Tour de France winners have come out of this philosophy. It's so simple, but it is so powerful. So when we talk about continuous improvement, for me, the marginal gains philosophy really works. So you could do 10% improvement of one thing, but you could actually do the far simpler thing, which is 20 things at 1% improvement. I mean, that's achievable, isn't it? In pretty much everything we do, surely a 1% gain can make a fundamental difference if we were to do it for lots of things. So Dave basically sort of explains this by saying, the whole principle came from the idea that if you broke down everything you could think of that goes into, for his example, riding a bike, and then improve it by 1%, you'll get significant increase when you put all these things together. It's just logical, isn't it? But so few of us actually do it. So few of us remember to do this. And the example he also gives is, do you really know how to clean your hands without leaving the bits between your fingers? If you do things like that properly, you'll get ill a little bit less. They're tiny things, but if you clump them together, it makes a big difference. I just love these analogies because they're so practical, they're so simple, but they're so obvious when you start to think about them. And they are things that, in business, you can really begin to obsess with. And these are the ways of building really good day-to-day habits, not to the point where you become sort of OCD about these things, but where it becomes, just really part and parcel of a continuous improvement mindset. And kind of running hand in hand with that, we're talking here about great habits. We're talking in here about how you actually collaborate and you do teamwork. Yes, it is about the process and it is about choosing the things you're going to focus on. But this is also about, this mindset that we've been talking about is also around surrounding yourself with experts, people who can help you to create a positive change, or, in essence, really a change of culture in your organization. Because if everybody takes accountability for their own little 1% improvements, what is possible? Can you just imagine that? If you had everybody in your organization every single day making a 1% improvement, think about that over a year, 365 days of 1% improvements from everybody in the organization. I mean, what kind of an organization would that be? It would just be incredible. So Clive Woodward, again, another sporting analogy here, but it again is so truthful in business as well, is Sir Clive would say that concentrate on measuring performance and winning will take care of itself. In other words, if you really drill down to these little 1%, measure those little incremental improvements, the success at the far end is just going to happen. It's almost like we've been blinded by setting smart goals and then just thinking, right, now I've got to achieve this great big smart goal without actually really figuring out the route to get there. This is what continuous improvement's about. If you're being given by your line manager or your CEO, huge, great targets for next year, and you're thinking, how on earth am I going to do that? It's about being creative. It's not about saying, yeah, I can hit that target by just selling more. So I've got to do more marketing because I need more budget, because I need to do more to grow. Well, actually, growth and value can come from removing things from what you're doing. Because if you think about it, you can become more profitable, not only by actually selling more, but actually by reducing cost. And in this current climate, maybe that is a really effective way of growing your organization. It doesn't have to come all the time from the obvious thing of increasing sales. You can reduce stuff to become more profitable as much as, and probably there's more control over doing it that way than actually trying to just sell more, because the marketplace might have different ideas. So continuous improvement allows you to kind of enter into this constant dance, this constant kind of negotiation with opportunity. For me, it's so exciting because it just opens up these doors for collaboration and for talking, surrounding yourself with people who kind of are experts in their own field, areas that you wouldn't even identify these opportunities, but they can. And if you're doing this very much as a central kind of sort of team, if you like, Then if you've got a team of experts, then using these processes, using this kind of philosophy, it's a very well proven thing. The Kaizen philosophy, which is all about change for good, in other words, continuous improvement, is something that just makes everything better. That was the old Kaizen philosophy. And you can Google on this and actually sort of find out a lot more about this kind of philosophy that continuous improvement is something that should be, almost an inherent core to your business and your organization. And without it, you can't grow, you can't mature as an organization. And then you're going to struggle versus the competition. This was the Kaizen philosophy, is that change is good. And can you imagine that if you had a central team of people, actually as evangelists in your organization, and maybe after this, you're going to be thinking, hey, I want to be in that team. That sounds a great team. It's all opportunity driven. It's all about efficiencies and value. Wow, what's not to like? But that can actually be quite difficult if this is a new concept for your organization. So something that I would suggest that you think about, if this is quite new, if this is a new kind of principle or mindset that you're hearing about for the first time, is that there is something that's worth having a little look at. And I'd suggest you search on the concept of Kaizen Corner, because the idea here within Kaizen, and there is a sort of a subset of the philosophy, is that it's not about centralized ownership of continuous improvement. This is about dispersing it across the whole organization and saying that, all suggestions, no matter how small and seemingly insignificant, all suggestions are welcomed. Because then that actually gives everybody, and again, if you're trying to build a culture of change in your organization, that gives everybody the feeling that, hey, no matter what I suggest, they're going to listen. Wow, my view is valued. My ideas are valued. That will open up the door for more ideas and more value from that person. So by bonding everybody together and saying, okay, we're actually going to sort of teach you how to do this. We're actually going to welcome it. And to some extent, we might even decide to incentivize economically or just, subjectively, but we're going to incentivize the people who actually contribute the most to process improvements. So the best ideas, the ones who actually roll this stuff out, the ones who constantly measure what they do and demonstrate the return on investment of time that they spend in continuous improvement. Let's give them a reward. Let's give them a bonus. Let's put them on a pedestal and say, you are staff member of the year. All these things can come into this process. It's about being creative about how you're going to build the culture in the organization. Because we've already, I think, established that it's probably quite a nice thing to have. But of course, if we can do this collaboratively and get everyone making improvement suggestions by using the concept of Kaizen Corner, which is everyone's valued, no idea is a silly idea, everyone's trained to properly analyze and kind of watch and monitor the changes that they're doing, these little 1%, then there's going to just be more and more and more. And actually, in itself, it becomes a way that you do business. Innovation is improved significantly, but also the way that you actually operate as individuals within this collective that you're calling your business is going to be so much more positive and so much more, enjoyable to be part of. So what we're looking at here is really not just continuous improvement, it's continuous innovation. And as the majority of changes are small, there's often less resistance to doing the change. If you're in an organization where it's like, oh, no, we don't do it like that. We've never done it like that. Or, oh, no, that's going to cost, as opposed to, yes, we'd like to invest in it. The perception is that we're quite resistant to change. Then little incremental changes are much more palatable. And the reasons being is that you can see results much more quickly. Is that, there's not going to be so much resistance because, well, you're not committing too much. So, that's fine. It's okay. Yeah, just go on and have a little play. Maybe just test that out over your lunch break or whatever. That's fine. You can go and do it. So you're not going to get necessarily those barriers. So continuous innovation, continuous improvement at this incremental level can be a great way of introducing the concept into the business. And of course, it will create a more agile improvement scenario, because people will think, hey, actually, it didn't take very long. That 1% only took me a week to get that done. Wow. Okay. And it lightens everything. it starts to sort of create this culture of, well, anything's possible. That problem that we had last year, do you remember that? Yeah, well, it's still kind of there, but wow, if we just did some little kind of chipping away at that problem, what could we do? And you'll see people's kind of mindset change. You'll see people kind of just coming on board with this and thinking in a sort of slightly curious sort of way. You see them thinking, maybe there's some stuff that I could do. And so it starts to build this innovation culture, which is so, so productive, particularly in these times of uncertainty and times of change. And a lot of the time, we're going to see this kind of thing come through in new product development as well. A lot of the time, continuous improvement as a concept sort of grew up within NPD circles, and certainly product marketing managers, most of them are going to be very, very familiar with continuous improvement concepts. And we've seen lots of different methodologies and processes come out of this. Something like Kanban, for example, again, Google it if you've never heard of it. It's a really interesting concept. And this is very much where it's all about kind of sort of positioning what you're doing in such a way that it's minimal touch. It's very, very light touch. What we're not doing here is saying that with any of these things in new product development, necessarily you have to go back to the drawing board and redesign something from scratch. If you're already in business, I mean, a startup is a different situation, but if you're already in business, what you're doing isn't necessarily broken, but little incremental improvements will give you, an opportunity to accelerate the things that you do. It'll give you an opportunity to add that little piece of value that maybe is missing in the marketplace. It gives you an opportunity to really listen to the market, to watch the competition, and just make those little improvements step by step, and then communicate. This Kanban style roadmap that comes out of this model allows you to communicate with all stakeholders kind of where you are going with a whole range of different continuous improvement projects, even though they might be very, very small. Each one needs to kind of be positioned and communicated so the business knows what's happening, your suppliers know what's happening, your resellers, wholesalers, distributors, so they know what's coming downstream. So continuous improvement is a great thing potentially to be using in your marketing and communications, because it's super positive, it's structured, it shows improvement, it clearly demonstrates added value and innovation, and it just positions you and your marketing as progressive. So in whatever market situation you're in, and particularly if you're in what might be sort of termed quite a stagnant or maybe traditional marketplace, where kind of change tends to take forever, just because that's the way it's always been, continuous improvement allows you to kind of make it lighter, make it brighter, make it more dynamic, and really kind of fuel some energy within the processes that you have. So in processes, what we're looking at here is to focus on measuring and systemizing process. In other words, what we're trying to do here is to strip out the inefficiencies. We're trying to take out stuff that really doesn't help. Often, when we're marketing, we sort of think, oh, well, if we do lots of different variations of this product or service, that would be great because it gives customers lots of choice. Often that's where we need to start our continuous improvement, because typically, because we're always so positive and we want to say yes and we want to deliver more, we've created too much. So stripping out variations and sort of versions of our products or services that really aren't serving us. And the 80-20 rule always applies, because you're going to get 80% of value from 20% of your products. You just are. It's how it works. It's economics. It's proven over centuries. 80-20 rule really works in here. What we can also do when we're trying to do these improvements is to keep using the question why. Asking the question why constantly over the same thing will allow us to deep dive to get to the root cause of a situation or challenge. So why is it we've got 25 products here when we only needed 2? Why? Well, it's because we thought it was going to be good for the customer, but we didn't really research. Why? Well, we didn't spend the time doing the research. Why? Well, because we had other priorities. Why? Well, because we hadn't really planned for what we needed based on competitors and based on the market research. Why? Well, because we haven't got a planning process. Why? Because it wasn't really part of how we did business. Why? And you drill deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So the actual obvious thing that you were talking about becomes the outcome, not the thing to change. Did you see the difference here? So you can identify that, oh, I want to change this. I want to improve this thing over here. But if you keep asking, why is this thing a problem? Why is this thing not working properly? You can then dive deeper and deeper and deeper into the root cause. And then that's the thing that has this 1% improvement associated with it. And or you can reverse engineer from a desired outcome. So if you see a problem and you figure out, well, actually, wouldn't it be great if we dreamed big and we got super innovative and we created this thing over here, which actually provided even more value than that thing? Could we actually reverse engineer backwards to show the steps that we need to take? And let's make those steps small to get from where we are to where we want to be. So you've got choices in here. You know, this is not one size fits all. There are different ways that you can continuously improve. And I just love these three things. One is about reducing the variations and the complexity. 80-20 rule applies. Second thing is the using the why technique to deep dive into the challenges and problems and opportunities that you have to get to the root cause that you're then going to apply the 1% rule to. And the third way is figure out what your desired outcome is. Where do you want to be this time next year? Where do you want to be 3 years down the line? Can you reverse engineer back and put those little steps into a timeline, get the resources and begin that journey? Measurement, 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 evidence, evidence, evidence. These are the things that we need to be able to do this stuff properly. But it's a mindset. It's a series of choices. And it's an opportunity really to add some huge value to the marketing that you do. So I would say, take this forward. If you're listening to this live here now, or you're watching and listening to this on catch up, I would say start right now. Think about one or two things that you could do to improve something that you experience, either an opportunity or a challenge. Improve it by 1% today. What could you do with something that's been just eating away or niggling you? How could you do that? What could you do? What 1% improvement could you make? Remembering to measure kind of where you are now and then measure the difference when you make that 1% improvement. How does it look different? How does it feel different? Where's the added value? Where's the cost saving? Where's the time saving? You've got to figure out what your measurements are, your key performance indicators. But there's an opportunity here if you start today. If you don't start today, it's one of those things you'll say, yeah, Neil, that was interesting, but hey, I'm busy. Well, maybe there's the point. If you're too busy to do this, maybe it's the busyness or the perception of being busy that is the 1% improvement you could make today. What could you strip out? What could you improve by 1% to just free up that little bit of time to consider this stuff? There's an opportunity for continuous improvement everywhere. There is no excuse that can be used really to counter this. It just works. So here are 6 things that you can think about to begin on this journey today. So you can set up what we might call think tank meetings. You get a group of people together, a small group, or just even one other person to actually just explore this idea with a colleague or a trusted other. Explore it, just sort of say, look, if we were looking to improve something, what would be the first thing we'd want to improve? Oh, it's this. Yeah, okay, should we try that? How should we do it? So just actually kind of, do a mind dump on all the opportunities that you have. If, you're at the moment feeling like, well, it's just going to be me and I don't really know where to start, you could survey the team, put out some questions, use something like SurveyMonkey, or just do a straight little email with some little options on a poll to ask where, if somebody wanted to improve something today or to get rid of a problem or a challenge or to come up with an innovation idea, what would they vote for? And give them some options. So do some team surveys to get people really starting to think about this. You can also do cross-team shadowing and training. In other words, you could actually, particularly as well, if you've got a few people into your think tank meetings and they're sat there thinking, well, I don't really know what it is you do, so how can I help you to identify an idea? Well, maybe get them to shadow your team, or maybe you go shadow somebody else's team, because you know that as part of maybe the process of getting a product or service to market for your customers, you know that further upstream in the process, there's a bit of a bottleneck here because we just haven't got enough product on the shelf to sell. Well, let's actually go and do some shadowing of the team further upstream and see whether we can spot stuff to help them. And of course, training, actually, by going in and learning what others do in the organization. You're coming at this from very, very sort of clear perspective, very, very open eyes, because this might be a new thing. So you sit with finance, or you sit with HR, or you sit with production, and you just absorb like a sponge. You will spot opportunities for improvement far, far more easily than the people who are actually in it day to day. It's much harder to do it when you're kind of bogged down in the detail yourself. And again, invite people to come and talk to you about the marketing. Show them your processes. Show them how you do what you do. Be open, though. Take the ego away from it. Don't kind of be defensive, but just say, hey guys, let me know if you spot anything I could be doing better. And then listen to what happens. Go find errors as well. If you've been plotting out your customer journey, that's a whole different topic. But if you've got your customer journey, you'll know that there are bottlenecks in your customer journey. So maybe some of those are opportunities for 1% improvement. In other words, if you get 100 people come through a particular advertisement, but you know that once they click on the landing page, that number drops down to 40, for example. Well, if you could get that to 41 people, looking at percentages here, just 1% improvement, what would that mean at the far end in terms of conversions? It could be significant. These are small things that make a big difference. So go find some errors or places where things could be better, or bottlenecks, or problems where things are just a little bit too slow or not quite the value you want. Go and explore those. See if you can establish a culture of change. See if you can encourage people, with passion and with, sort of real inspiring examples of things that you've done or that you've seen in your travels. Hopefully today has given you a few little tasters of things you can go away and explore and research. But if you can create some kind of culture and acceptance of change, and that change is good, it's not a threat, then you can actually start to really begin this journey for your organization. And the final thing I would say is try and limit the limitations. You will always encounter people in the organization and other stakeholders when you start to talk about continuous improvement. People will fold their arms and they'll sit there and say, well, we don't do it like that. Or, no, well, when I did that before, and they'll start nodding their head and tutting and being negative. Try and limit the limitations. That maybe those people are not the people you initially need in your think tank meetings, or maybe there are certain ways that you can actually sort of combat that by incentives and just really with your enthusiasm. So dare to dream. Don't limit yourself by, well, this is what we've seen so far. Lots of organizations over recent years have been pivoting what they do. Turning through 90 degrees, doing something completely different based on their core competencies. So dare to dream. Continuous improvement comes in all shapes and guises: the people, the processes, the systems, the products. In all of these areas, you can see improvements today. So my question to you is, which one of these 6 things are you going to do? A meeting, a survey, do some shadowing. You're going to look into the detail of what you do and see if you can find some errors or bottlenecks. Are you going to focus on a culture thing, or are you just going to dare to dream? Are you going to just open it all up and say, do you know, I'm just going to explore this because this sounds like fun. And if you do one of those things and you make 1% improvement today, tomorrow, who knows what you could achieve. And this stuff is infectious. Once you start sharing examples of how well this is going, your organization and those around you will listen. Because again, as I said earlier, what is not to like?